Thanks everyone for joining today's seminar. So Verena and Lynn are going to present a seminar on leadership, and I'm gonna just give them the floor to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their initiative.
Want to start, Verena?
Yeah, sure. Then maybe let's start with one slide where we quickly present our initiative. Thanks for that. I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah, this just very briefly so you know who we are. Thanks for joining tonight. There are also two familiar names, so I'm happy to see two people that I know from previous times. So SciLead is an initiative that was founded 4.5 years ago. So this is our 5th year of existence. And our idea or goal is basically to shape and to advocate for leadership and mentorship in academia, how important this is. And the vision is basically to create an academic environment that acknowledges and fosters leadership and mentorship also from very early stages on in our career, and to also see and acknowledge those as central pillars for good and reliable science. And so the idea is to really empower scientists from quite early stages on within their career, such as already master's or PhD level, and to promote sort of regenerative practices to enhance well-being and thriving of individual within the academic system. And by that also empower people to actually choose to stay in science, in academic science. So yeah, if you have any questions later, we are really happy to talk to you more about the initiative. And now I will go and start the presentation. So the topic today is resilience in academia or resilience building in academia. And very briefly, maybe just to mention, since we are kind of a small audience, please feel very welcome to interrupt me at any point in time. So the idea here is to have some input from my side and from Lynn's side on resilience building and some practical also examples, and then to open a space for sort of a debate or a discussion on specific ideas that I will present to you that we could talk about, but we can also just go into an open exchange, which many times is actually the most fruitful. So before we really start with me talking more, I wanted to ask you a little bit about
And
what
maybe,
your
maybe Verena, just a very
yeah.
thing. Please also feel free to use the chat if you don't want to interrupt Verena, as I just did. If you like, I'm monitoring the chat, so we will see what you're writing.
Thanks. So yeah, so to come back and start with the theme of resilience, and also to engage you a little bit, so you're not only passively listening. We would love to ask you first what your perception of resilience is. So before we kind of prime you into one direction or tell you a little bit more in depth about resilience and some concepts behind that. So if you feel like it would be great if you could join Menti. So you can either just scan the QR code, or you go to mentimeter.com and then you can enter this 8-digit code, and then you can just fill in your what comes to your mind if you think about resilience. And as we speak now, I will leave this on for maybe another 10-15 seconds. So if you want to just go ahead and scan, and I'm going to make a little switch to Mentimeter so we can see some results. Okay, there are. Can you see my screen? Okay, I hope you can see it. Okay, so we have already quite some things coming up. So I'm just going to read a little bit out. out loud. So not burning out, persistence and strength, mental strength, calmness, mindfulness, not giving up, handling setbacks, and self-regulation and determination. Yeah, that's great. Let's see if there are more coming up. Yeah, if not, that's a great start. And it's really interesting to have strength and persistence in the middle. And yeah, now we just have some sort of idea. Maybe if we want to, we can go back and you can also see whether there's anything that changed over the course of the presentation with regards to that. So I'm going to go back to the presentation, and now we have some sort of idea. Here, the words below, they came up in a different workshop that I gave previously on this topic. So I want to start off with a definition. There are many definitions of resilience, but I picked one from the American Psychological Association, and I'm just going to read it out loud to you a little bit. So feel free to just close your eyes and listen or read with me. But so as per their definition, resilience is a process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging experiences, and especially through flexibility, mentally, emotionally, and behaviorally, and to be able to also adjust to external and internal demands. And there's a number of factors that contribute to how well people can face adversities or setbacks, and including the ways in which individuals view and engage with the world, the availability and quality of social resources, and specific coping strategies. So it's sort of an array of different skills, so to say. And the good news is that according to psychological research, it's been demonstrated that these resources and skills that are associated with resilience, they can be cultivated and practiced. So everyone can become more resilient. It's just a matter of being, able to or wanting to actually practice and increase resilience. So now let's go and see a little bit or understand a little bit better resilience in academia. So why do I have to be resilient, or we have to be resilient in academia, and what does it really mean, and what does it impact if we are not so? So why does it matter for scientists? I'm sure all of us have a reason to be here and know that it is important for us. But so basically, it's important because it means that the capacity of students, researchers, and educators to pursue their academic goals persistently in the face of challenges and setbacks. And it also involves maintaining motivation or drive and commitment despite difficulties over long-term projects, which most of our projects are pretty long-term. There are research obstacles to overcome in almost every project, and also there's a lot of competition in academia occurring, and in certain systems, such as in the US, there's also coursework along with, for example, PhD research that is already kind of requested to be done along with coursework. And so how does resilience impact academic performance and career satisfaction and well-being? It impacts a lot of different areas of all of these three. And so I just want to name a few here. So resilience impacts adaptability, the way we can actually flexibly adapt to any of these challenges. It helps to navigate uncertainty. It helps to be optimistic or stay optimistic. Then resilience also helps to focus on our goals, to maintain productivity and creativity over particularly long periods of time in which we might be working towards finishing a specific project, but it just takes a long time. And then also openness toward new experiences. So it basically fosters our curiosity as well. to accept setbacks, and specifically, we are not labeling here failures, but setbacks, because I think failure has such a negative, strong connotation, and we can reframe it, which will also be coming up later again. And we can also manage stress better, and decision making is also impacted by your degree of resilience. So now I just wanted to show you this image here, which kind of provides a link also between mental health and resilience. Because after all, here we speak in collaboration with minds, and they focus on mental health, and mental health has been explored quite a bit in the context of academia over the last few years. And resilience has slowly also kind of become a subject of interest with regards to meta research. So researchers doing research on research. And so one image that I actually found quite nice to kind of remember what resilience can actually do and why it's so important to maintain or build on it is that you can actually imagine your mental health is something that should be protected from a lot of different challenges that are going to impact or trying to kind of reach your mental health or impact your mental health. So every drop here would be a challenge, and your mental health is this flower that needs a little bit of them, but not too many. And so the way we can look at resilience is basically a sort of this umbrella, which should come up right now. Let's see, that kind of support or protects your mental health from these challenges becoming too much on you. And so just to provide you with some evidence that people have already started to look into resilience on academic researchers and how much of an important subject it is, there are these three, there's just these three publications here that I wanted to mention that look, well, mostly here, these two, well, this one is on resilience, the one on the left, in academics, in higher education, and then the one on the bottom here is also resilience of university students. The upper one is more on mental health. But so these go sort of hand in hand, and these 2 or 3 publications are also just from the last 2 years, so this is still quite a young subject and something that just starts to be a little bit more in mind. And so if we talk about resilience, we of course need to also talk about why do we need it and what are these challenges that are kind of impacting or trying to impact our mental health over time if we do not have built resilience. And so I just want to not acknowledge stress and burnout, because these are very prevalent problems in sort of all aspects of the work sector, but also in academia. And we need to talk about those more. So for academics, or for scientists, let's say, or people working in academia, there are different stressors that are also kind of specific to academia. So maybe maintaining work-life balance is not so specific, but what is specific is funding pressure. So many of us need to make sure that they get their own grants in order to support themselves and their own salaries and their own research. Then a big problem is that we have limited contracts mainly until we potentially become tenured, which is really, really the end goal. But until then, the reality looks pretty different. So that's also a big stressor for many of us. Some of us even write their thesis without any funding in the end. Then a big problem, but a big phenomenon in academia is also imposter syndrome, which has been also discussed more and more over the past years, which describes this phenomenon of not feeling actually capable of doing or executing the things that you are expected to execute, and that people feel like they don't deserve the role or the title they're in. And then there's also this problem of lack of mentorship and leadership in academia, which is why SciLead actually exists. And this is just a few of the bigger challenges, but these are potential sources of stress, and in the worst case, even burnout in an academic environment. And since burnout is also this big word that we mention many times, but what it actually means is maybe not often so clear to everyone, or there are many different factors that actually kind of indicate burnout. We wanted to dedicate one slide to also that specifically. So this is taken from the Mental Health UK initiative, and these are now just different signs of how to recognize burnout. And it's always good to keep this in mind, because there are a lot of different factors, which are physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, and also behavioral symptoms. And I don't want to emphasize this too much right now, but it's always good to keep those in mind. And particularly if you feel in a specific situation at the moment or in the future that you might show some signs, it's always good to go back to this website or any other website and just check on you, or also on colleagues or friends that you feel like might be kind of endangered. So there are these three different pillars of symptoms that it's good to just keep in mind. For example, physical includes something like headaches, breathing, sleeping, and feeling always tired, also even muscle or joint pain. Then there are emotional symptoms, such as basically losing your confidence, feeling worthless, feeling overwhelmed constantly, feeling demotivated, and basically losing interest also, and also losing joy in what you do. And behavioral symptoms would be ranging from social withdrawal to which leads to isolation, to some sort of behavior where you might be relying on specific foods or even drugs or alcohol in the worst cases, to become very easily triggered by things, and just losing your sort of sense of responsibility as well. So let's go on the other side, though, how we can actually prevent these things by building resilience. And so I want to talk mostly, or we want to mostly talk about how to build personal resilience, but then also in the last slide, focus a little bit what is needed or necessary in order to also bring resilience into your teams or into your collaborations. So there are many different concepts of resilience, and overall there are 5 or 7 pillars of resilience. We decided to focus on 5 pillars of resilience that are adapted from, or actually presented by, the Wellbeing Project, which is a big project to foster well-being across the globe. And this is, it's UK based. So in the next few minutes, I want to take you through these 5 different pillars of resilience and elaborate a little bit more what this means. And it might be good to just keep them in mind, and maybe go a little bit and reflect while I'm talking which pillars might be more evolved, or which pillars you might be wanting to build on, if you want to build on your resilience. So I'm going to start with energy, and here this refers to basically your physical energy levels. So this includes healthy food consumption. It also contains or entails physical activity, boundaries as well, and sleep. And so basically what they say here is how you can build on your energy pillar is to move regularly, so do some sports, or even just stand up every hour or something. Then really focus on just stocking up your energy levels, basically. Eat healthy, sleep, and try to also do some activities during the day that actually relax you, and practice to say no, because many of us are very drawn to say yes constantly. And then it's much harder to actually cancel things if you say yes first and then say no later. And there are some exercises where you can practice saying no in a sort of easy, playful way. So if you combine those, then it should actually help to maintain your energy levels and manage stressors and quality of life better. Next pillar would be future focus. So this refers to your purpose and also how much you feel in control of what's happening. And so the idea here is to practice setting goals, which might not just be, okay, I will get my PhD in 5 years, or I get my PI position in 7 years, but smaller goals that you can actually reach faster and that keep you motivated once you reach them. So maybe some goals that you can reach every few weeks or so. And then also have a strategy of how you can achieve those goals. It's also always good to have, in case something is not working out, to have a plan B on hand. So you don't have to stress while you see that maybe something is not working out on your plan B, but to already know, okay, if this doesn't work, I might be doing this instead. So you also feel like you're more in control. And then also regularly practice to reflect on your developments and also realign your goals. It's okay to not reach the exact goal that you had in mind 4 years ago to reach in 5 years. So it's okay to just adapt them and feel also more like you kind of are in control of where you're going. And this will help with navigating stressful situations because you have a little bit of a different perspective ahead, and also feel less anxiety and uncertainty about the future. So the next pillar is inner drive, which relates to motivation and self-belief. And there's really not so much to mention here because it's basically trying to practice confidence, and that's super difficult, but there are some small exercises that you can do, like stop comparing is something that is actually quite difficult, and especially in a high pressure academic environment where it's about grants and citations and papers, it is quite difficult. What is also important though is to celebrate small wins and to track your own progress, maybe over every 2 weeks. What did you achieve? So you can actually look back and see that you achieved quite a lot, even though it maybe doesn't feel like it because it's still so much ahead in your academic way or project. But just focus a little bit on smaller milestones, and like with motivation as well, small goals. So it's easier to keep up momentum when you celebrate these small milestones instead of having huge ones. And then you could also practice more gratitude, and also remember always why you do things. So that's related to the purpose, like why are you doing this? Yeah, I'm gonna say something to the purpose later as well again. But yeah, that's it about this inner drive pillar, which is also not an easy one, but these small sprints, so to say, they might help. Yeah, to just feel more confident in your ability if you look back a little bit, yeah, more often. And then the fourth pillar is strong relationships. And so this is all about building trust. It's all about accessing support. And of course, yeah, this refers to building supportive networks, which of course refers to family and friends, but also mentors that support your professional and personal development. So it's always good to look for someone else other than your supervisor to have you support and guide through difficult situations, because after all, we are quite dependent on our supervisors, unfortunately, in academia. So I really recommend having one or two mentors that are not directly connected and that have a different perspective on you as well. Yeah, and then there is something that I wanted to mention here, because many people that are resilient and seem resilient, people perceive them as very independent and individualistic, but most of them have a lot of positive relationships and big support networks that actually make them be so resilient. So that's really important. And then the number 5 pillar is flexible thinking. And so this refers to open-mindedness and also positive framing or positive psychology. So there are specific ways with which our mind aims to trick us into being super critical, very self-critical, and always looking for the rather negative parts instead of focusing on the positive parts. And so to sort of develop a flexible mindset, there are some things that we can practice, and there will be more on the next slide, but it's basically try to avoid using words that are black and white, like it's either a good or bad outcome. Also try to put less value on specific or particular things and people, while denying potential other situations or value of other things. So we always tend to prioritize a specific thing over another one, but maybe trying to see a good, something good in either outcome is also helpful. And then whenever you don't feel so good, remember that everything is always temporary and it will change. And then something that is a big journey is to also recognize negative thought patterns. And so since we're talking about this, we wanted to talk also in one slide about a growth mindset, which you might have heard before, that it's important to build and have a growth mindset. But what it actually means is to rather, instead of being drawn down or put down by setbacks, to actually embrace them and reframe them. And there are these few things how to build a growth mindset. And so first of all, it's recognize mistakes or setbacks and also just accept them instead of judging them. And then really learn from your own mistakes, but also from the mistake of others. And of course, this only works really well if people also talk openly about mistakes and embrace them as sort of lessons to develop from. Then instead of using failure or failing, let's just reframe it and say learning. One important thing is also to try to not strive for recognition. Don't do things because you want to be getting recognition for them. Just do them because you are convinced that these are the right things to do. So it's much more satisfying for yourself, and it's easier to be confident in the things you do when you do not just do them to be recognized. I think we were at don't strive for recognition, which is something that we can also discuss because it's very difficult to, on the one hand side from us, this is kind of required also to be recognized for what we do, but then to not be too tied to this emotionally is very hard. I'm very aware of this. How practically to embrace this, it's a different discussion, or like it's a different thing. But yeah, so what also helps to build this growth mindset is to try to value the process more than the end result. Of course, we are always focused on the publication because this is our currency, so to say. This gets us new grants and the recognition that we shouldn't necessarily strive for, but to also embrace the process of learning and evolving and seeing our development over time, which we also tend to maybe sometimes not really recognize, only when we leave a position and when we look back. And then there are some other things that are important, such as criticism can be very harsh as well in an academic environment. And I think many of us are not really well trained also on how to constructively criticize, but still try to see this as something positive. And if you have some role models, also review their successes and maybe even talk to them. And then you will also see that there are so many setbacks behind their successes, many more than the actual successes mostly, but we only see, especially in social media and so on, we only see the impressive stuff, but there might be so much underneath that we do not know about, their journeys. And then something that is actually quite helpful for me, I've adapted this since the last workshop, is to use this phrase "not yet" instead of "not." So like if you want to achieve something, or if you have a goal but you didn't manage to, such as for example standing 1 minute in handstand, I have not achieved it yet. But instead of saying I have not achieved it and I will not learn this ever, it really changes a little bit over time, I think, the way you think about things, because potentially you can achieve all of this, but you also, it's easier to grow towards it if you switch or change a little bit the narrative. Then every time you achieve a goal, I mean, we should celebrate those. And then in order to keep up the momentum, not as a sort of run, but like in a regenerative way, it's good to set a small new goal to achieve, to also stay motivated over time. And then also something that I personally struggle a lot with is view time and effort realistically. Like how much can you actually achieve in a healthy way, other than how much is possible and I have to achieve all of it. So just, I mean, we experience this over time, how much we can actually achieve and what is good for us and what we can do without starting maybe to realize that we have some of these early burnouts symptoms or so, and then we have to go on vacation for like a month in order to go back and then slowly start moving again towards our goals. Yeah, so that's basically the input on that. And now we wanted to say one thing about resilience in research and collaboration. Because after all, of course, it's good if we are all resilient, but then we need to also bring this into our workplace and practice this together, which is, I think, an art. But we can also work on this together. And so I don't have a big slide here. It's just a few like inspirations here, but there are definitely setbacks that you have also to cope with in a team in research. So you write this big grant proposal together and you spend weeks on it together, and it might not get funded immediately, not yet funded. Then there might be papers getting rejected and not yet finding their journal, which it can feel like a huge slap in your face, but it's in the end the normal process, but it just doesn't look like it because everybody just publishes them eventually. But the whole pain journey we are not aware of, only when we go through it and talk to others about it. And then the limited contracts are also something that also bosses might want to hire you longer, but then they might not have the money. So it's also something that where two people are involved, or more than that. And then negative results, and as we in my old lab called dead projects, which are projects maybe that only yield negative results, which are not really so well recognized in the scientific community right now, with regards to publishing and showing how much effort you put into something. And so projects might just get stopped, and then you might have to start a completely new project potentially. So these are all situations where we actually jointly as a team or in collaboration go through setbacks that require resilience for all of us together. And so here I think the focus is also on building and really putting time and effort into building a support network. where maybe your collaborators and you, or your team and you, are the pillar of the network, which has to be strong in order to support yourself. So that also requires or entails that you can find, again, different mentors. You can also find peer groups. I would actually kind of think that this here is also peer group, because we all are looking for something similar, or are interested in the same topic and want to talk about it. And then also to have professional communities on top of you working on, or everyone working in the collaborative network together as a team. And so, I mean, we could talk about this for another hour or something, but something that might, I mean, there are many techniques that, or approaches or tools that might help enhance collaboration and effective communication. And this needs to be practiced also much more, definitely, in academia. It's just not in focus so much in too many teams, or it's not general practice, let's say. Hopefully you have that in your work environment. But then there are different themes that also we need to think about more in the way we talk in science. So intercultural communication is a big thing. That we have such international teams usually, and the way you might talk to someone might offend someone from a different culture background, but we might not even be aware. So it's important to train ourselves, or for us to get trained into how to really respectfully talk with people that come from different cultural backgrounds. Then the language justice is basically entails this whole thing that English is the major language in science, and everybody's required to perfectly speak English. But of course, not everybody can. And justice in this case would just mean that everybody, that there might be more languages in which we can communicate science, or at least have our sense that we are more sensitized towards, yeah, not everybody speaking perfectly English, because why? It's just impossible to request this from everyone. And then it goes more into like how to do effective team building and effective meeting culture, because many scientific meetings are structured in a way that they are really, really not effective and annoying, and nobody really wants to be there. And it's just not good for the person speaking, and also not for the people attending. And it could be much better in many cases. And then also just how can we lead teams and research groups in a way that people are just more happy, or more regenerative, basically, that we are not facing this early burnout or stress, or people just go and leave academia behind. So I wanted to end with some potential more practical tools, how to build resilience. And I found them on a website that is called positivepsychology.com. I put the link down there. And if you go on this website, it's great. There are many, many different things to explore, and there are many resilience building activities. So I just copied some of them out here. And I don't want to go through all of them, and some of them might be sounding familiar to you. Some of them I can also not explain right now to you, but there are many, such as, for example, finding your purpose. Like how can I, like, to kind of reflect a little bit on what do you love to do? What are your skills? What do you want to bring to the world, and so on. Like, for example, this Ikigai exercise, where you then can find, sort of in a Venn diagram style, what are your skills that you can potentially merge into a job, but that you also love to do. And so it might be just the best thing to find a job where you can actually live all these different skills. Yeah, and then there are other things, such as this, like practice gratitude, or write down every evening or morning, like 3 good things that you experienced during the day. And these are things that just make sense over time. Like, if you practice them over time, they actually enter slowly our system, and they shape a little bit the narratives that we tell ourselves. So yeah, I really recommend you going there. And yeah, and I think that's actually the end of the input. We have some suggestions here of what we could be talking about. Like, for example, what are your long-term strategies of building resilience, or do you have any? And how can you imagine, how can we build a more resilient academic system? Like, what can institutions actually do to achieve more resilience in the system itself? And how can we navigate career transitions with resilience? I'm also in a career transition right now. Or yeah, we can also just talk very openly. What spoke to you, or what do you want to tell or listen to, or like just also let's use this group to, yeah, just to learn a little bit from each other. So maybe I'm going to leave this open for a bit, the screen here. But if you want to just go into this open discussion, we can do that too. So I'm gonna stop talking now, because now we want to hear from you.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Verena. Great talk. I think resonates with all of us. Many things that you mentioned. I guess I just have like, I don't know if it's really a question, but maybe like I'm wondering, sometimes I think the word resilience is kind of weaponized a little bit. And I don't feel personally that it always have like the complex way of how you described it. Like people sometimes just use it as a thing that you just need to, push forward and be resilient and not necessarily, be flexible. I feel like sometimes it has that negative connotation on its own. So how can we, I don't know, maybe find more ways to describe things that you described and, I don't know, change the culture towards more accepting ways? Um,
So that's a question for me.
I mean, if anyone else wants to contribute, but yeah, I think it just, I, I personally, whenever people talk resilience, especially, I don't know if you, sorry, if you've ever encountered in um, biomedical research, the way like resilience sometimes is described as just there's some subgroup of people that just like innately resilient and others are not. And it's not maybe more of a like cultural term where you can just say, okay, maybe there are way to build up resilience and like it's more fluid and there are other things that you can do. And like support from the environment also plays a big role. So I'm just kind of trying to understand if there like how to make that cultural shift because like that have that like negative connotation a little bit in my perception of the word resilience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I don't have an answer to this actually. I think the problem of the word is a little bit that we, like you said, that it's a little bit misconceptualized or misused maybe. I think it's probably the only way I see is just to talk about it more. And also define it more, right? Because it's not a single thing, like you were saying, that people have it or not. I mean, I know there are genetic resilience, there's genetic resilience too, but mostly to diseases and not just to the systems we work in that are basically the disease at the end then, right? Because we are either resilient or not. I think what is most important is that people know that they can practice this and that they can become more resilient. And it's not just going on vacation. You can practice this every day in theory, according to these pillars. I mean, I don't really know if this is it really, but to just to empower people to actually try to practice and to enhance this, just to make people more aware of it and talk about it. I think we need to talk about so many more things.
Yeah,
Like
Verena, Christina also raised her hand and unmuted herself.
No, yes, sorry. Like, I just love this discussion, and I was wondering, like I was fascinating about the idea that culturally we could have a different, like, misconception of resilience, and that could drive then stress, right? Because resilience is a kind of, like Verena explained very well, adaptation to stress moment that can be make you feel a failure, instead to resist to this, adapt to this, and go over that with a lesson learned at the end, because it's something to learn to adapt. But like, I'm wondering, when you say creating a resilient academic environment, how institute can support resilience? And I was wondering, like, how, like, it's a beautiful question, and I think it's also a beautiful thing to discuss, because yes, we finished this PhD, and I mean, I say, yes, I'm resilient now to failure, I'm resilient to everything. But I mean, after I went through all my PhD, I really question if I would have again the energy to go through again. So if I would do again, I don't know. Like, it was very strong experience that changed me a lot. But yeah, apart of this, yeah, I would love to discuss these, like, possible ideas, even to suggest it to institution, like how to bring adaptation, be aware that this stressful moment can guide you through all your life and can make better scientists or worse scientists. And I'm wondering how we can build these all together.
I think maybe to give a bit of input here, and my like ideas on that. Of course, if there would like be a one size fits all solutions, that would also be awesome. And if we would have that, we would make a lot of money out of it, I think. But so I think it's kind of a wall where we have different bricks that come together to build this, and the wall doesn't need to be like super strong and on every part, but if you do have too many holes, you don't have a wall anymore. Um, and I think building resilience in academia is one of the things, is of course building personal resilience. And how you do this, there are different ways, but how you do this is actually something that you have to find out for yourself. And there can be support systems to show you like how to do this, or kind of join you in your journey there. And on the other way, building resilience in a team or in a like in a bigger group is also something that can be done on a very small level. Like, what can you do in your team to facilitate resilience? For example, can you engage more in active listening to people that you supervise, or also that are your supervisors? Because sometimes, they can also be under so much pressure. Um, but also thinking about, if you go, for example, if you have that, if you go on a group retreat or so, I don't know about your experience. My experience was scientific group retreats were just poster presentations in a nice location. And to suggest like, hey, can there be also like a team building activity or anything where we not only focus on the scientific side of things, but also on the team side of things, so that we build psychological safety in the team. And how this is done is also kind of a bit like, there are different ways for different teams to do this. Yeah, but this is like my two cents for this.
It make lots of sense to me, honestly, also because I mean, we talk about the leadership, right? So I think, like, the being first on us, like, be aware of that, how we can bring in our team or in future as a leader, like, it's fundamental, like. And I think maybe in the institution, maybe also a mental health awareness, right? Like, support that can be given to scientists to be more aware of what they're going through, because even the word of burnout for me was it was a new thing during my PhD. Say, why
Mm,
I feel like this, why I have fever all the time, why I'm so sad, why I get sick, and so on. So all these burnout, like Verena, well, like symptoms, shilling, I say, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I have all of them. So like, and if you don't know, it terrifies you. You think at the point that you are a failure and you cannot
mm.
come out. So it's good that maybe more of these awareness, like talks, like the one of Verena, it could be an inspiring, like to new scientists or new PhD and so on, to realize that how to build the resilience to go through that with more enthusiasm than fear, because then at the end, as Verena said, it can be like very scary. Sorry if I took the time, but I'm really happy to engage in multiple discussion.
Yes, of
And
course. And I think like going into all of these things on their own, like how can I preserve my energy? Um, you can do another workshop only about this, like for half a day, maybe a week.
I
So
agree.
that we just give you like a bit of the spotlights to think about, like, okay, maybe I haven't thought about focus. So what can be like, what can be goals that I can set myself? What can be small steps that I can achieve? Yeah.
I'm actually even thinking, I mean, I was thinking to print this 5 pillars for myself, and put them next to my desk and just to check it regularly. Like, how is this energy thing? How is the flexibility, the perspectives thing? And if it's not like just to know, to reflect on it. And I even think would be great if everyone who starts as a new member in a new group to just get this as sort of a little guide, for you, because there are so many things to look at. But I don't want to take more time. And Juliana, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just quickly. I think for example, for myself, I often see like energy or something as something I'm lacking, and I know I have to take my breaks. But I also figured out that I'm my biggest enemy as well, because I think Christina was kind of saying it's like, okay, I know I have to take my breaks, and then you're always like thinking like, okay, what are the others thinking, and you'd start like comparing you with each other. But at the end, it's like you and no one else really cares. But you always like have your own like little circle going on. And I think that's, for me at least, that's the biggest challenge I'm facing. It's not like the other one providing me the room to get resilient, but then it's me I'm fighting constantly with myself. Yeah, it's just I wanted
that's
to add on that.
yeah, the fight with yourself like is the most difficult part, like, I think, because you don't realize until someone tell you like stop to fight with yourself. That's completely true. I feel you.
Yeah, thanks so much. I guess we have a little bit of time left. I was just curious if Virina or Lynn, you can maybe talk a little bit how, like, what kind of things like you found for yourself that like make you feel more resilient? I don't know, maybe creating this kind of workshops or like other things. I don't know, like
Lynn, you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. So there are different things that and I have to say, of course, sometimes I follow them more strictly than not. For example, full disclosure, I had a big exam just a month ago, and now I was full of work, and I feel like my resilience is off the window. But in general, what I try to do is that I spend as much time as I can outdoors, which helps me a lot in energizing. I meditate. I schedule now, as I'm an adult in my 30s, I schedule regular meetings with friends like 3 weeks before it actually happens. Um, and these are the things that I do quite regularly. I try to keep track of my movement, which is a big part because I left academia and now I'm at a desk job. So this is where I am like all the day. I got a standing desk, which is nice, but you know, you just have to do it. Um, And yeah, these are the things that help me a lot. I'm not that good in setting goals actually because I overestimate myself quite a lot and then I'm frustrated and I just said, okay, actually it works out most of the time, so I'm not focusing on focusing actually. Which is okay. And I said that, yeah, I actually focus a lot on the energy part.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. That's very nice personal examples. Verena, how about you?
Yeah, I'm actually also trying to reflect now in the moment. I think so for me, movement is also a very, very big thing. I just got injured through moving too much because I'm
Morning.
like maybe a bit too motivated sometimes, and then it negatively falls back on me. But yeah, usually I move a lot. Um, I sleep enough. I noticed that if I don't sleep, my brain just doesn't work. It does not. So I really need to sleep enough. Um, yeah, the purpose, I'm constantly struggling a little bit with the purpose, but actually SciLead helps me a lot to have purpose in the system still because, sometimes it's a little hard to justify why we actually do this to ourselves. And then this actually really, really helps. And also just talking about it, it always gives me a lot of energy. So that's really something that um, feels really good just to give space to have these discussions that hopefully will gradually change some people that we reach. Um, and then I think I focus also a lot of spending time with people and so these strong relationships. And I got also mentors outside from like my bosses or so. And yeah, I maintain my friendships. I put a lot of effort in those right now because I got also to these burnout situations quite often, and I'm not a very fast learner if it comes to this, so it happens every now and then again. And yeah, so I think engaging with the network also really helps. Um, and then adapting this not yet. This is really helpful. Like I really adapted it since January and it really makes a difference. Um, yeah, but that's it for now.
Thank you. That's very insightful. Uh, if there's anything else you guys want to talk about or any questions, I mean, I think from the slide, at least that you showed last, for me, like the career transition, that's like a very big stressor for I think a lot of academics. And yeah, I think like navigating uncertainty in general for me is really, really hard personally. And yeah, even if some of these things could work very well, maybe when you just like continue going through the motion of academic life, it works. But when you're like, oh my God, what's next? It kind of doesn't work as well anymore personally for me because kind of routine goes out of the window. You just like trying to find some sort of next challenge for yourself. And yeah, I think for me, like what works also maybe like trying to like maybe build a network more to what already exists and also but use the network that already exists and I don't know, asking for help, things like that. But yeah, I think it's just like this uncertainty thing, if you have any also ideas of how to navigate it.
Anyone
Christina?
wants to say?
Yes, I was thinking as well, like this uncertainty,
Yes.
yeah, like I think as a scientist, I love to don't know what I'm gonna find. It's beautiful, right? You get like, okay, what it gonna be tomorrow? Like, how my experiment is gonna go? Is when you fail experiment that then it can become like very frustrating, and then or like when you don't like you have very short time to make your experiment work, that then I think like this uncertain like it can stress you out a lot. So usually like I think building a like or getting used to, but I think it's very fundamental for me to understand. Okay, you don't like to be uncertain, then you need to build a routine, right? For you, is fundamental. I think there are people that live of this adrenaline, don't know what is gonna happen, and people that need something to grab and say, okay, I have this and feel comfortable with that. I don't think there is nothing bad on that, because also for me there are like for working related, yes, it stressed me out to know that my contract is gonna finish and then I can starve to death. But but for science, like thank God I'm in Germany and not in US. I have to say in Germany there is social security that can support you. This is a great advantage. I have to say that. But yeah, I can understand, Alexander, you say like I don't know what is gonna happen to me as a career, like this scare me out and I want to have something more solid. Then I would say like go for that. It's not failure, actually. It's something that you want, then get it, get this security. And like for people that instead like to jump into the dark, it's not me, don't worry. Then jump into the dark. But I think there is nothing bad in feeling this and building resilience also on that, right? Like it means also this to accept your own like limit, that there are no limitations, accept yourself as you are. So knowing yourself help probably to build the resilience. But I'm not an expert, so Verena, I mean like jump into that if I'm saying something wrong.
Yeah, nothing wrong. I would actually add to that that um, I would give the advice to find out where your uncertainty lies and what that actually implies. So, if this is regarding financial insecurity, for example, which maybe, as Christina already said, maybe also may really be an essential issue, like what are the essential things that you need for your life? And financial security, more or less, is kind of one of the essential things that you need. Um, However, for example, if the uncertainty is then, I don't know, for creativity or how your scientific career will develop, but you know that, for example, so you should always make somehow sure that your financial needs are somehow met. And this can be through income or through spending, of course, like and then find out or try to find out what is more important for you. So, for example, for me, I said I left academia because I didn't want to go onto this roller coaster of short-term contracts because I knew this would impact my mental health too much. And then I went to industry, where of course I now have the possibility. So I have financial security. However, I'm a toxicological consultant, so I don't choose my
Wow.
own projects. The projects come to me, and then I do what like the clients need to be done. Which is of course limiting my creativity. I can still have that, but like in a smaller amount. I'm not so free in choosing what I really want to work on.
Mhm.
Um,
So
but
you
that
are more
was,
creative.
But you can
yeah,
outsource that, I guess, to
yeah,
through other ventures. It's actually funny
yes.
that you're toxicology consultant because Allison is also she's actually
Ah,
at her job right now
nice.
in some meeting with some client probably.
Um, yeah, so that's a decision that you kind of have to take, but I would think about the uncertainty, and if it's like an uncertainty because of like mental insecurity, which is of course very important, but it's managed differently than like existential insecurity.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah,
and
no,
then
thanks so much for all the suggestions. Yeah, I think I think in my case it's multiple layers of it. I'm also an immigrant, and
it often is.
it's often a thing. Yeah, so there are a lot of layers to it. But yeah, I think like maybe navigating like one step at a time and just like seeing what your priorities, where your priorities are in the moment, and then kind of pivoting from there. I think that's very good advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
George.
no, actually, no decision needs to be permanent. I have seen people, not a lot, but I have seen people that worked in industry and went back to academia. So
Yeah,
even that works. So it's like
yeah, I
just
think
try it out.
yeah, I think I'm kind of also try to master the power of letting go.
Yeah.
And just okay, even if I don't know exactly what my career is going to be, I'm open to any outcome and just maybe sometimes exploring things that I just like. And even sometimes they may be like not within science specifically. It really also energizes me. Just like new hobbies, yeah, that might not like directly give a necessarily like career input, but overall just make me feel better, more confident, and yeah, I think that that helps a lot too. Yeah.
Also, career coaches can help. I
Mm,
actually also had 3 different ones, and kind of it's like a therapist. It might take a bit, but going through those was also kind of helpful for me. Even though like there's not a specific thing that I can tell you that was helpful, but just to know that I dedicate some time every week to think about this was also good. Uh, yeah, that's like with the career uncertainty, but that's also a big one. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I think the meeting gonna end like in a few seconds. So thank you all for your like and thanks for the talk to Verena and Lynn. Thanks also for the great discussion and for the participants as well. Thank you all for coming.
yes,
It was
thank you
really
very much.
great. Yeah,
Thank
hope to see you again at some point and yeah.
Yeah, we
you.
would love to.
Yeah, maybe let's plan more
Yeah.
of these kind of talks. Thank you
Yeah,
all.
Sounds good.
thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Mhm.